With main entrance artist here with Josh Lamonaca and Menspire, as well as Oliver with Kelly right there on the camera. We're going to go ahead and get into some action right here for IBS Weekend. Go ahead, Josh, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Alright, thank you very much. My name is Josh Lamonaca. I am co-owner of Menspire Salon. Thank you guys for tuning in live. I hope we get more viewers as we go along. So what I'm going to do is present to you what I've got with my model. Massive thank you to main entrance once again. So if you want to just come up closer, what I want to present to you is what we're working with. Now, what we find in the salons as of recent is we're seeing a lot of guys with their crown being cut really quite short. Also, I'll show you this side as well. This is also really short on this side. So what we're trying to do with this haircut is to really preserve the length and try to regain a balance throughout this haircut. Again, on this side, you'll see that we've got a lot of heaviness on the right-hand side. So what we're going to do is try to really soften that through and work with a haircut that eventually styles up into a quiff. Over to Ollie.
Hey guys, how are you? My name's Oliver Morehouse. I'm an international educator for Menspire Salon London. Today guys, what I'm going to be working with is something that you're going to be seeing a lot in the salons at the moment. It's something slightly softer. You know, we've spent a long time seeing shorter work, more clipper work. And slowly but surely, we're starting to see guys, they want to see some hair on the sides, they want to see some hair on the top of their head. So I'm going to be working, guys, with a really salon-friendly type technique. I'm going to be working with a technique that we would refer to as cross-graduation, where I'm going to be looking to build up some weight through the contour area of the head and perhaps taper this area out, either with my scissors or my clippers afterwards. So I'm going to get going, and I'll come back to it and explain where I've got to shortly.
All right, appreciate it, Oliver. Right now, Josh, I noticed that last time I saw you when you was here, I really like the way how focused you are on your sections. So I just kind of want to talk to you a little bit about your sectioning approach and what it's going to be for this particular shape.
Okay, so for this particular shape, what I really want to focus on is making sure that I'm leaving these areas to sit flat. Because rather, when these hairs are shorter around the contour of the head, they tend to react and respond negatively and stand out 90 degrees base from the head. So with my sectioning through the very top, I want to really retain the length from the front. So with that in mind, I want to work on the internal length, and as you can see, there's a lot of length there that is unnecessary to this hairstyle. And what happens then is that causes this hairstyle to drop, and therefore we don't get the volume at the very front. So, through this side as well, again, I'm going to be sectioning out from the recession, okay, just to reduce this heaviness as well. So, we'll come to that as we go on.
All right, so I want to go ahead and let you do that first cut that you go with. You're going to be utilizing like some point cutting. What type of cutting technique will you use for this?
So, I'm going to be working with my structure with my club cutting technique, okay, just to ensure that we get a solid foundation within the haircut. If we have a solid foundation into the haircut, then I know that the haircut's going to last, you know, this gentleman a substantial amount of time. What I'm also going to be doing around the front is, because I want it really soft, I might revert to working with the finger razor, just to really increase the texture through this haircut.
All right, Josh, so really thank you for catching us up. What we're going to do is go on to Oliver, but he's already approaching his cut while Josh gets everything together over there. All right, Oliver, I see your sectioning pattern. I love that deep section that you have there. What would you call that particular sectioning pattern that you have?
I mean, to be honest with you, it's a question that we get asked quite a lot through social media, etc. at Menspire. What I'm working with is a very simple sectioning pattern. It's quite simply almost like a rectangular box section through the top. And then just to give myself option as I move through the haircut, I'm working with more of a triangular section. Just to almost give myself that flexibility. If I want to hold a bit more weight through the crown, then I can do. If not, I can, you know, I can eliminate it afterwards.
All right, so you're taking those diagonal sections. Go ahead and let me see that cutting approach that you're doing there. So you're club cutting that.
I'm club cutting, yeah.
And we're going to continue those. What are you going to do?
What do you mean exactly by club cutting?
Okay, so I'm working with the full area of the scissor. Now, if I was working with points of my scissors, I'd be working with something a little bit softer. But what I'm really trying to build up as we go is some graduation, is some weight through the contour area of the haircut. And by doing the club cutting technique, what I'm able to do is control that weight just a little bit better.
Now, is this something that is it other names that you would call that, or is it pretty much considered that?
We at Menspire in our education program, we always talk about this technique as cross-graduation. Now the reason we talk about it as cross-graduation is quite simple. We work one side, completely over, across one side to the opposite side of the head, and then the same thing again. Literally just to build up that weight through the crown area.
Brilliant. Sections are clean, which I guess definitely in barbering, clean sections is something that whether the hair is wet or working dry, working clean like this, obviously it's your first.
Sure, it's so vital. I mean, we've spent so long trying to save time by being really quick and really kind of almost relaxed with our sectioning patterns. But what we found over the last few years with Men's Spire Salon, etc., we just find that going that extra mile with our sectioning patterns just makes the whole haircut that much fluent, and that's why I think that, you know, we're really starting to make a move on the industry.
All right, awesome.
All right, so guys, we're gonna move over to Josh. Josh, you're getting right into the cut. Thanks so much, Oliver. We'll come back.
Okay, so welcome back. So here we have the very frontal panel sectioned off. Now this area here is where I want to retain the length. So what I'm going to do is start from this very right hand recession, okay, and I'm going to find my new length from the graduation that hangs over on the right hand side. So previously we can see that we've worked, or someone has worked in this way. So I'm going to use that length and utilize that as my balance. So there being my shortest length, I'm going to use that as a guide to come across and work with a square cutting line. So what you'll find is that I'm going to be eventually working diagonal sections and a square cutting line.
All right, now working those diagonal sections, the goal is, what are you doing by taking diagonal sections? What are you trying to create by diagonaling off the exit?
Excellent. So the reason why I'm working with diagonal section or diagonal sections is because I want to work in which the way the hair will be styled. So commonly what we tend to do is we work straight from the front or straight from the back, we go square across. But with this particular hairstyle, I'm going to be working a hairstyle that transfers over from the left hand recession to the right hand crown. So therefore, I'm working with a pattern that just works in a diagonal format. Okay. So guys, if you've got any questions at all, we really want to make this enjoyable and educational. So I'm sure if you've got any questions, then please ask, because we want this to benefit you guys as well.
Frank Mussolino, thanks for joining us.
Frank's always tuning in.
We're missing Gerard today. He's doing clients at the moment, actually.
Really?
So we have DJ tuning in and holding it down for us.
Make that cash, bro.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're seeing now is I'm actually starting to transfer over to this point here. Okay, so I've taken my guide from the right hand recession and now I'm transferring all the way over into the internal length. Okay, and that's going to come all the way through up until the very crown. And what you'll notice is, again, at the crown is that it's really short. Okay, so this is something that we have to be conscious of and also be very patient with. Okay, so I'm going to continue working my diagonal sections across the top, and we're going to be working that square cutting line.
Okay, great. We'll catch up with you when you're finished there.
All right.
All right, Oliver, over here we noticed that you're approaching that from the other side. Right in this recession area that you're working in right now, you have that diagonal. Is there a reason why that one comes a bit lower?
Okay, so probably the hardest part of
Come
this
around this
technique, the hardest part for this technique for me is really creating that balance. You know, obviously we've got to find a completely new guideline from nowhere.
Yep.
Now, how I like to do this is I like to set myself almost targets for each side of the haircut, in which I'm going to be doing the same thing on this side as I did on the other. Now, it's really hard to kind of gauge the length to begin with, but if I can put in these platforms almost that match on this side to the other, then I'm going to be more inclined to find that length.
You know what? I know a lot of times out there, it's really easy to get really nervous working right on the skin, blade to skin. Do you have any pointers to share with everyone?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, when we're working on the skin, it's really
Can I put a spot here?
important. It's really important to have our client's head in the right position, but also it's important for our body position to be important. It's something that we talk about an awful lot at Men's Spire, especially in our educational facility. We spend a lot of time talking about our body posture. Now, for me, when I'm cutting on the skin, I obviously want the angle of my scissor to be exactly where I want it. I want it to be resting on the face, but I don't want there to be put too much pressure, because that's where you can get yourselves in all kinds of sticky situations.
And what size shears are you working with for that?
And today I'm working with the 5.5-inch shears. They're, you know, for me, a really good scissor to work with day to day, purely because they're kind of a happy medium between the shorter lengths and the longer lengths. But something that I am learning as I work more and more through this men's hairdressing industry is that the barbers are using really long scissors. Now for us, yeah, sure, and I think, like, you know, we like to work in such a precise way with our sectioning and our haircuts that if we were using scissors that were too big, it just wouldn't be feasible, and we'd be making our job a whole lot more tricky for ourselves.
Totally. But we see you now moving into the crossing element of it, where you're crossing over at. Is there anything particular you look at once you get to that part behind that ear area?
Yeah, so I mean, what I'm trying to do at the moment is I'm being as consistent in my technique on this side as I was on the other, and I'm trusting in my technique. I'm working as similarly as possible, like I said, to the opposite side. And when I finish it off, I'm going to be looking for this weight area, this crossed over section through the back.
Great. So we're going to move over to Josh. Yes, we have a question?
We've got a question for Ollie about what type of shears he's using and where they can be purchased.
Okay, good question. Really good question. These are actually our Men's Spire Salon scissors. We call them the black and reds. If you head onto our website, our big cartel page, you're going to be able to find that. There'll be more information coming up very soon about that.
And you're still leaving me a pair here before you go, right?
I'll leave you a hand.
Yeah, always getting it. Always getting it.
You want to speak to this man on my right hand side about that.
Speaking of that, we're going to go ahead to him right now.
All right,
Do
great.
we have a question for Josh?
Yeah, we're heading over to Josh now. Let's move it to the crowd. What did you say?
Johnny Asana, he's asking if you can explain the danger areas of the shape and the areas to be mindful of.
And it's from Johnny?
From Johnny Asana.
All right, Johnny. There we go, Josh.
All right, lovely. Welcome, Johnny. Thank you for tuning in. So the danger areas for this haircut are no doubt at the moment the crown area, where we can see it's really, really short. So again, this is an area where I don't want to be cutting the hair, because no doubt it responds negatively if it's too short, and it will stand out from the base. Again, along this whole side, we're really going to try to preserve this length, okay, as again it's been cut previously too short and it's really round. So from our frontal view, we really want to try to create a square shape. And again, from our profile view, we want to create more of a triangular dimension, effectively waiting for this area to grow out.
So whenever you're doing a situation where you have an area that's been pre-cut,
That's right.
do you check those first before you even get into your sectioning pattern?
Yeah, I think it's important to be mindful of areas that really determine the shape. So if I look at him from this area here, okay, from his profile view, I want to see this kind of almost triangular shape. But at the moment, if you come round, Kelly, you'll see that it's very, very round. And we tend to associate round shapes with more feminine things, you know, and more feminine hairstyles. Again, from the very front, if we look at him from here, we can see that no doubt the shape is also really round.
Yes.
Okay, so it's really, really important that with this particular haircut, okay, we want to work with a square shape on the front, and from the profile, okay, we want a bit more dimension through the back. Okay, so just to recap on what I've done, I've worked with diagonal sections, bringing everything up with a square cutting line, okay, and therefore if I cross-check in the other way, everything again is a square cutting line. So what I'm going to do now, once I've released the length on the top, okay, and we've taken the weight away, I'm then going to work on this very area here where we can see this weight, okay, and again underneath there's an area of an undercut. So what I want to do now is just to start building some more weight and creating a more of a connection. So as you can see, from the hairline, I've taken the section that runs straight into the hair. And therefore, from that, I'm going to be taking diagonal sections across. Okay, I'm going to be taking it through the comb. And I'm going to be establishing my guide from the previous haircut. Okay, and we're going to start to now build the shape.
I like that approach that you said, just taking that guideline from the previous and just kind of having that forward thinking in it to know to do that so that it works with the shape that you're basically putting on it.
Sure, I mean, I think it's really important that we focus on shape for men's hair, because if we're not mindful, okay, then we could be creating, again, a shape that might be quite feminine.
All right, so you know what? As you're moving on through that, can you let us know what you're looking at for that fall of it?
Okay, so as we're working here with our cross graduation, similar to Ollie, okay, we're working with diagonal sections, and what you can see, I'm starting to build the shape. Okay, so when it's flat, okay, you can see a bit more strength on the curvature of the head, and as we push it back, okay, we've got this softness. Okay, so I'm going to work through with my diagonal sections, working through to the crown.
That section?
So I started this section right at the very hairline here. Okay, so there's the temple, and
You're
it runs
just following
straight
that naturally
that's
all
right.
the way
So
back.
it runs straight into the hair. Okay, and I'm going to use that. Okay, for my guide, working with a diagonal section. Okay, and we're bringing that out, and everything then becomes graduated in. So there we go. There's our line. We're going to work all the way until there's no hair left to cut. So we're working with elevation being our main contributor. There's the cutting line.
And would you say your elevation would be at, you know, what degree would you say?
So generally would say it's perpendicular to the head. So it's pretty much 90 degrees coming out from the temporal ridge.
Perfect. All right, we see that Ollie's moving into this back section of this parting. So after we get going with that, we'll check out what's happening.
Great. So
All right, go for it.
Okay, so I've just taken out this triangular section, I've unclipped it and I've kind of combed it down. And what I'm really trying to look at this point is how my previous technique in which I've chosen has worked. Now we can see that the weight's starting to build up through the crown area, but for me, I'm really happy with myself that I have given myself this option.
Right.
As you can see, my client's hair through the crown area, like a lot of guys, isn't the thickest of areas of the hair. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to work to build this area up by simply working with the same shaped sectioning pattern as before, still almost following the principles of our cross-graduation technique. However, as I work, I'm going to be working with slightly more elevation, purely so I don't build up too big a weight line through this crown.
And would you say that kind of keeps the occipital area from being
Exactly,
too heavy?
exactly that.
Okay.
So if I could work this, really flexibly. I could comb this right down. And what I'm going to be doing then is I'm going to be just adding lines that I'm going to need to remove afterwards. But what I'm doing is I'm working along the same principles as cross graduation. I'm elevating slightly. I'm aware of my elevation by using my wedding finger just to push into the head.
Right.
And then I'm just quite simply making the cut.
Nice. So it's a more productive way of working, actually.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
I think quite often in men's hair, guys, it's so easy to make a mistake that we can't go back on. But if we can allow these sectioning patterns to give us the options in which we want throughout the haircut, then that's great.
Perfect. All right. Do we have a question
Yeah,
there?
I had a question. Paul Mills was wondering, I guess, for both of the guys, if they see a difference between UK barbering and US barbering, and if so, what that is.
Oh, absolutely. I can answer that for you.
Yeah. All right. Let's move over, Josh, as you move into your next section, as Ollie is crossing that graduation quite nicely. Go ahead and tackle it. Who asked that question?
Paul Mills.
Paul Mills. All right, Paul. Go for it, Josh.
Okay, Paul Mills, thank you for asking the question. So I got asked this question as well when I was in Miami last month. So I think Ollie would agree, that the main difference between US barbering and UK barbering is Photoshop. I'm just joking.
I love it.
I'm just joking. So I think it's the difference is the clipper work in the US, okay, is, it's of a fantastic standard. Whereas the UK, we're based more upon scissor work and textured haircuts. And I guess, really, that's the fundamental difference, okay? So I think the UK barbers have been really exploring their work with clippers, and I think now the US are starting to really explore their work with the scissors. Furthermore, so what I'm doing here is you can see my disconnection, okay, as I take the hair horizontally. So what's going to happen is this hair here, okay, is then going to overlap onto the hair as we dry it. Okay, so I'm working again with diagonal sections and a square cutting line, just reducing that length on...
How did you know how much disconnection to take?
So generally I work with about 1 inch, okay, over the top, but it depends on the hair type. We can see that this hair type is of a medium texture, okay, so rather there's a nice balance between the length of the internal shape and the length on the exterior shape.
Now, one of the concepts of doing that type of filling that you have happening, Josh, is that hair is going to push,
That's
and
right.
then it causes the other hair to fall over, right?
That's right. So it's going to give us a little bit more volume,
Yeah.
and almost like a building a bridge and a structure to help hold that hair in place.
Nice. I
So
really
just-
like that.
Subsectioning each section. I'm just working again with that diagonal format. I'm going to raise that up. You can see my small guideline there. There we are.
And that disconnected area, is that coming, what section is that coming from? Was that a triangle section you did for that?
That's right. So it was similar to a triangle section,
Okay.
but it was slightly more curved as the head shape is no doubt slightly curved. Okay. So we worked from the recession, okay, and then it just slightly curved over round to the other recession. So I'm just working in centimetre sections, working with that diagonal shape, and again that square cutting line.
Beautiful.
And Josh, Armando from the class that you just taught in Miami was just talking about how amazing the class was for him and how much he recommended.
Oh, that's
people. So I just
beautiful.
wanted to send that.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Armando. Great to hear from you.
And you're going to be teaching this weekend as well, right, Josh? Want to
That's
touch on
right.
that a little bit?
So Monday, we're going to be teaching at the IBS.
In fact,
New
Aaron
York.
Johnson just tuned in. He says hello.
Hey, Aaron. All right, so many people tuned in. Fantastic. Okay, so I'm just coming to the end, and there's pretty much nothing here to cut, okay, considering that the length is slightly shorter on this right-hand side, okay? And the reason for that is because someone has worked with a square shape. So, with that there now, what we're going to do is we're going to blow dry this up, and we're going to see exactly how this falls. All right.
Great. We're going to go ahead and move over to Oliver while he touches on. He's moving up inside that section while Josh gets prepared for his blow dry. Do you want to talk about any of the product you're going to use before you start that, Josh?
Okay.
Yeah?
So we're just working with the Menspire matte paste, and
Alright.
the reason for that is because we like to get the hair a little bit grubby, a little bit dirty when we
Good
work
word,
with our blow
grubby.
dry.
I like
Great.
grubby. I like grubby. Good word.
And it just aids the blow dry, so...
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Let's see where we are.
Okay, great. So as you can see, guys, I've dropped out my original first section that was separating the top hair
Right.
from the bottom hair. Now, something we get asked a lot through social media is, why do you use so many sections? Why is there so many clips in the hair at the beginning of the haircut? Now, the answer is quite simple, guys. What we're doing here is we're breaking down our haircut into 4 easy steps, especially with this top area.
Right.
Now, as you can see, I have a side section on this side, I have a side section on the opposite side,
Right.
and then I have a frontal section through the frontal lobe, and a section through the crown. What this allows me to do is it quite simply allows me to work through the side area of the head and create that connection now from the old haircut to the new haircut, and then the same thing on the opposite side. And as I work through these sections, I'll come back and explain.
All right, great. So with this, you're still doing you're doing like more of a block still?
Yeah, exactly. So how I'm almost working now is I'm working with block graduation as opposed to cross graduation. Now we find that cross graduation is really good because it allows us to create that flow that we always talk about so much in men's hair.
Yeah.
Then with the block graduation, what I'm starting to do is I'm continuing to build that structure through the top area. Now we like to see square shapes on guys, right? So that's all I'm doing. Through this contour, I'm working on a connection and building up that square shape.
So the elevation of that block graduation that you're doing, you're going to work it until it just gets
Exactly. So the final section in which I'm taking now, I'm working with full elevation. I would say I'm almost 90 degrees from the head,
Right.
and I'm making the cut.
Perfect.
And I assess it at this length, and then if I need to remove some of it after, I do that.
you do.
But like we spoke about before, keeping my options open is so
That's
important
it, right?
for me.
That's it. Options. That's a good key. All right. Great.
You know what, some people ask them also if they could see a little bit of the blow drying because they're not used
yeah.
to styling men's hair.
Oh, yeah. We'll move right on the way to that once we get... Where are you going to go from here, Oliver?
I'm going to go over to the opposite side and do exactly the same thing.
Okay, so still block graduation? doing
Block
the same-
graduation, and I want to build up this contour through this square shape.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much.
Okay, so with my blow dry, first of all, I'm just really getting the scalp nice and warm, okay, because once the scalp is nice and warm, it just transfers into the hair, okay, and then it just dries throughout, okay, so it actually effectively works efficiently with my drying time. So at the moment, what I'm doing is just moving the hair with the brush all the way over, so I'm just really smooth, making the cuticle nice and smooth. Once I know that the hair is relatively dry, what I'm going to be working with then is just pushing the hair into the position from the crown in which I'm going to style it. So it's actually going to work almost like this in a swirl. So as we come forth from the back, we're just trying to connect that crown in, okay, where previously it was standing out from the head. So from here, what we're going to be doing is working our blow dry into the position. You can see I'm just following this very front panel on the half of the head until I get to the very front. When I get to the very front, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to briefly lift it up. Okay, we're going to go straight over, and we're going to bring it nice and round. And that's just going to give us that volume when it comes over that internal shape.
You know what I like about the way you blow dry that, Josh, is that you're actually blowing it the way you cut it.
That's exactly it.
So that way it works right into the pattern that you're shaping it.
That's right,
Great way
because
of
I mean,
planning that hair. I love that.
if we think about it logically, this part of the head is nearly dry.
Right.
Where's the camera? Okay, so the internal shape is that which I cut previously and at the beginning, so that's almost half dry. So if I go over and refine that with my blow dry, okay, it's going to dry up really quickly. And commonly what we find is that, barbers or hairdressers, they tend to dry from the front straight away. So what happens is all of this becomes dry, but then the back is wet. So what we end up doing is over-drying the front, and then because of the heat, it causes it to dry. And therefore, then we go and try and blow dry the back. So what we've done is we've worked from the back, we've built up our shape, we've gone on the right side through the graduation, and then we go and get our lift through that very front. And now you can see we're really starting to build our shape, and we're really starting to show our silhouette.
Now, what you say with the heat, is it on cool air or warm?
So I've got it on a medium heat, okay? Let's just spin it around for you guys. So you can see now my graduation is starting to form through this right-hand side, okay? So it's starting to really lock its shape. So we're just really, we're now starting to become ready for our clipper work, okay? So we've got the silhouette in, okay? You can see that we've got this much more nicer shape, okay? Slightly triangular on the profile. And again, if you look at him from the very front, come round, Kelly, we're starting to get a much more of a squarer shape and a bit more balance throughout this whole haircut.
Now, would you say it's a difference whether you start with the perimeter first or the top first?
That's a fantastic question. It's a question that I think we get asked the majority of the time when we're educating. So, do we start? Why do we start with the top first, primarily? So, if there's a haircut that's come in for about 2 weeks, then generally we would start with the sides.
Got it.
But when the hair needs to be restructured, or it's over, it's been a long time since the previous haircut, then we start to restructure it from the top. Because if we can get the square shape in, then from the clipper work, we can go straight off the head and keep that square shape. So as you can see, we've got our square silhouette in right now. Okay, so the clipper work is going to be really easy to finish off. Because when we work with the clippers first, we tend to build outwards. And then we go and cut the top, and then we cut the sides and cut off this corner, which then spreads the graduation of the fade.
Yeah, exactly.
So it kind of combats exactly what we're working against.
Brilliant. Great way to answer that, Josh. Love that. All right, and now we're going to go on into seeing a little bit of how you're going to approach that in the crown area before we move on to Oliver.
So, excellent. So here, what we're going to do is, we're going to work with some point cutting. So I'm looking at the head shape now, and I'm working in 2 channels. So imagine my comb separating the left side and the right side. And also what I'm going to work with is from the front, we're going to work slightly different. So I'm going to section that out right now.
But that was your disconnection that you cut earlier?
That's right, so that's my disconnection there. Okay, so we're going to focus on that after we've worked with the internal shape. So now we've got just this area. If you come from the top so you can see exactly what I'm working on. So I'm working on almost this kind of rectangle shape. I'm going to bring the camera right above it, okay. That's it. And then from this rectangle shape, we have 2 areas. Zone number 1 and zone number 2. So I'm going to start from the very back. And we're going to see our square cutting line, and we're just simply going to raise it up, and we're just going to point cut through. So we're not going to go right to the root, okay, because we know that if we go too close to the root, then the hair is going to react negatively.
Can you explain that one more time, the 2 sections that you're taking right now?
Sure, no problem. So if you can imagine, okay, this was our disconnection from previous.
Yep.
So we're going to completely leave that out.
Okay.
So then we have this interior shape, okay,
Yes.
which is almost like a rectangle. So from this rectangle, if you come right above the head, I'm going to separate this in 2. Okay, so this is just a structured way of working with our point cutting and our personalization, okay, so that we don't cross every single time and take off too much hair. So we're really just working consciously with our personalization. So you can see I'm taking another section, okay, I'm working it up. You can see that the hair is combing almost backwards, okay, so I'm coming from behind, taking it up, and I'm working my point cutting through. So I'm going to work all the way up until the disconnected area, okay, and then I'm going to work on the other side.
All right, appreciate it, Josh. Thank you. All right, Ollie, what's happening over here?
Okay, cool. Okay, so now I'm working on essentially what I spoke about as my 3rd section of this top area. Now, I spoke earlier about how I actually wanted to maintain all this weight and length through this area. So all I'm doing is I'm working with vertical sections, and I've already checked the length. I could have gone slightly more graduated through the back area, but what that would have done probably for me is build up a little too much weight. So all I'm going to work with is almost something square. I'm going to make my cut, and then I'm going to check how it falls. Now, something we like to do at Menspire quite often when we're cutting the top areas of guys' hair is work off of vertical sections. Now, the reason we find that this works so much better is, again, it gives us that option. We can make the cut.
How do you know that your length is right or wrong?
Okay, exactly. That's a really good question. So what I'm basing this off is I'm basing this off of the previous hair that I've already cut. Now you can see, this area is the area that I worked really hard to build up. So I don't want to be taking this hair any shorter than this. However, what I do want is a connection. So I'm still working off those vertical sections. Now the reason I do that is because it allows me, as soon as I've cut the hair, to see how it falls. Now quite often with guys' hair, we find ourselves working almost horizontally from front to back or back to front. And what we never actually work out is how the hair is going to lie.
Right.
You know, we're manipulating it with the comb, but when the client comes to do their hair themselves, it can get really tricky. So I'm onto my final section of this back right-hand side. The reason I know that is because I'm just towards the top of the ear. Now, a bit like when you're cutting ladies' hair, I'm using points of the head to give me my
Oh,
guides.
that's a good question, because I was going to ask you, would you say that would you be traveling, or are you like pivoting?
I am working off a pivoting technique, but I'm trying to use no over direction. Now, the reason being for that is I know that I've got the weight in the contour. Now, this hair, quite simply, needs to just sit and flow over the top of that.
It's a good flow.
Now, as we can see, if we get that camera in nice and close, we can see that that hair is really being encouraged to sit towards the back of the head. Now, you know, if he was wearing his hair forward, we wouldn't be working with these techniques.
Exactly.
But that's why all these techniques are really important to remember, that they're techniques, not haircuts.
Right. And now we're moving to the opposite side.
I'm working towards the opposite side
Spin
now.
around here.
Now, the thing that's a little tricky on this side is obviously, as hairdressers, we don't really want to be cutting down too much.
Aye.
Okay? So I'm actually going to have to ask Kelly to move now, because I'm going to come onto this side of the hair, and I'm going to be combing the hair away from me, which is something, again, we're not taught to do too often in hairdressing.
Yeah.
However, if we use these fixed points, the mirror, you know, and have our control and trust our technique, we should be absolutely fine. So as you can see, my guide's here. I'm combing away from me. And I'm just following exactly the same technique as what I did on the opposite side, but almost like a
That
mirror
section
image.
there.
And as we see, we can check that this hair is really starting to flow back. Okay.
All right, so now as we go into the part, because I noticed you did the block graduation before on those side panels.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking as you're moving towards that particular area?
Well, like I said, I'm using the top of the ear as my fixed point to work from. And that's also,
so that's keeping you- that's
exactly.
keeping you
So
registered.
when I
Okay,
cut my
yeah.
block graduation, I stopped
already know
when
where
I
it
got
stops
to the
at.
fixed point of that head. And now I'm coming back the other way, I'm almost meeting in the middle.
So it's like, you know, when you're sectioning the hair, one would say that it's more creating a map, so you know which
Exactly.
directions to move in.
Do you know what? We talk about it so much in education. We map our haircuts out right from the beginning. You know, we don't always know exactly what we're going to do with the hair style at the end, but with our technique, we're very strong.
It allows those options.
Yes.
Yes.
We have a question for Ollie from Pod Mills as well.
Mm-hmm.
On how you said it looks like your client has finer hair.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you create fashionable current looks with men with finer hair? And if you have any tips for that?
Yeah, sure. I think something we need to be really, really cautious of is that we don't start adapting our haircuts too much because someone has a finer area through their crown. Now, like I've spoken about earlier in the VT, is I've worked at building this weight through the crown area. Now, to be honest, for me, as long as, you know, we've got this hair here to work with, that should be enough. He's going to have maximum weight in the area in which he's got the least hair.
Great one.
All right, nice. I think once we move to the front, what's going to be your approach right quick, just to break down?
Yeah, so with the front, actually in my mind, I was looking to keep this disconnected and maybe put some kind of connection in there somewhere.
Right.
So I'm going to have a little reassess, I'm going to have a
Alright.
look at it, and then I'm
Perfect.
going to make my mind up and we'll
All
come
right,
back to
perfect.
that.
But
Thanks
before
so
we
much.
leave, can you just go ahead and tell us show us the sectioning you're going to take?
Okay,
to finish
fantastic.
this?
Right, so I've got this front area. It's almost like an offset triangular section. Now, the reason I decided to offset this triangular section is, if I was to put this in too perfectly, what would end up happening is that the hair would be disconnected in almost too much of a perfect point, meaning that it will sit really obvious over the other hair. Now, because I've offset it slightly,
It's going to be more natural.
it's going to be
feel.
really natural. So when he brushes his hair back, because he doesn't want to spend hours blow drying his hair, when he pushes his hair back, it should just sit right back and flow really nicely.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Alan.
Cool.
Okay, guys. So just whilst we're waiting for Oliver, we just previously worked two channels, first and second. Now we come to the disconnection. So I'm going to be working the same way that I worked with my panels. Okay, we worked slightly diagonal, and I've already done this section. Okay, so we're going to be working.
I'm sorry, would you mind to take that section one more time?
Absolutely. So from previously, when we cut it wet, we worked with a diagonal section. Okay, so we're coming the hair over, bringing it through, okay, and we're simply working with that same section that we worked when we worked it from wet. Okay, so I've just softened this all through, at this disconnection area. So I'm going to go through the very front now and continuously work in the same way that I worked from wet. Okay, so I'm going to raise this up with the fine side of the comb to create to get more tension, and you can see what we've got here is our cutting line from previous. So I'm going to work point cutting that through just to get that softness back into the haircut. So once I take it from the disconnection, you can see our disconnection forms here. So I'm going to point cut from the disconnection, and from this disconnection what we're going to have is some V cutting that just transfers into that longer area. So we're working with the V of the scissor, okay, right where the screw is.
Can you show me that a little bit more?
Absolutely. So right where the screw of the scissor is,
okay,
we're going to work with our V cutting, just sliding through the hair, so we get a separation that looks somewhat like this. Okay, so a separation within each hair. Now, from the shorter hair that you see, this was where the disconnection lies. So in fact, logically, if we have a short panel that then transfers into long then short, then we have this fluid movement that's just going to again work and bevel straight over the internal shape.
Now with that technique, Josh, I noticed that you had your finger. Would that be like a guide point with your finger being on the blade right there where you have it?
That's right. So as in this finger right here. There, yeah. So this finger right here is just working as my support. Okay, so I'm just working through the length, okay, working with the scissor, okay, and just slightly closing the blade as I work through.
Oh, it's the claw.
So again,
Josh, I had a question earlier about why you decided to start Menspire.
why did I decide to start Menspire? Fantastic question. So when I was about 14, 15, I really struggled to get a haircut that I enjoyed. And I guess I was really fussy and particular at the time. And at the time that I wanted this particular haircut, we used to go into the Afro-Caribbean barbers, okay, to get our fade, and then we used to go to the hairdressers to get the haircut on top. And for us, that was very, very challenging. So I started cutting hair when I was about 15, and from that, I really knew what I wanted to create. I wanted to be able to do the fades, and I wanted to be able to cut good hair. So with that entwined, we really wanted to create this experience in the salon where it was appointment based and it was run with refreshments and also beautiful hair. So with that in mind, we started to, myself and Samuel Palmer, which is my business partner, we decided to create the salon where we had all of that experience in one. So back to the hair real quick, thank you for the question. As you can see, my shape now has a really nice form, okay, and it's got a nice texture, okay, and we just really sort of loosened that up, okay. Again, we really want to try to grow this out, and I'm going to start on my fade work now. So again, just check in from the front. You can see we've got a much more of a square shape on our frontal view. Okay, we've got lots of beautiful texture.
The movement is nice.
And
Looking handsome over here.
yeah. And from our profile view, we've slightly got this much more triangular shape, and again, trying to preserve that length through the crown.
Okay, great.
All right. Are we ready over here?
Yeah, sure, we're ready.
All right.
I've kind of reassessed. I've looked at my my model's hair, and what I've decided is this hair through here is just too long to maintain. You know,
Right.
if I was to keep all of it, I think it might not be as aesthetically pleasing as it would be as if I was to balance it up a little, but also it's just going to be really hard for him to style himself. You know, and that's the thing at Menspire. We want to create workable looks that are going to be easy for the client to manage. So what I've decided to do is I'm working off that hair that I've just cut before. All right, I'm using this as my guide, and what I'm doing is I'm going to be working from this side of the head, which is going to be the parting side, and I'm going to be working almost with a slightly vertical section. However, as I move across the head, what I am going to be doing is over-directing everything to that previous section. So the ideal is that I'm going to be working to create that disconnection, but just through this front right-hand side of his head as opposed to both.
All right. Let's see that approach down for that section.
Sure. I'm working with the points of my scissors too, just through this front area, just because once I've put product through the hair and I've dried it off, I don't want to be combing it through too much after.
You know, we had a question, Oliver, like with a receding hairline, how would you approach that, you know, depending on the recession area? Like,
Sure.
Round, square?
Sure, I guess you know, it's very similar to that previous question we had about the thinning crown area. We don't want to be doing anything that's going to be looking to cover it up as such. However, we just need to be conscious of it when we're cutting the hair. Now, in this instance, what I'm doing is I am working to looking to work the hair back. However, I just when I talk to my client about how he's going to style his hair and how I want to style it, something softer, something with perhaps a little bit more volume that, you know, might be a little bit more rugged. It might hang down a little, you know, something that he's not going to need to do too much to. Okay, so I'm coming on to probably my final section now. I'm still making sure that the sections are consistent and they're clean, and I'm over-directing everything back to that very first section. Now you can see where I'm taking my guide from, still working with the points of my scissors.
I know I noticed about that with your point cutting, it was coming from an angle slightly, right?
Sure.
So is there a reason why, you know, depending whether you go right straight with the hair the way it comes out, or
Sure.
twist it to the angle?
I mean, when we're working with drier hair, you would see my scissors in a slightly more vertical way. However, what I am doing at the moment is angling this point cutting to encourage this hair to sit back on top of each other. Okay? Now, this is something that as hairdressers we must be so conscious of, you know. We're all very quick to stand there and point cut everything, but it's important that we're conscious whilst doing it.
Right. Very nice.
I'm starting to sort of look at almost like my finished product now a little. So I'm going to be applying some product and I'm going to be drying very, very shortly.
All right, great. So we'll let you get to drying before you move on to the next phase.
Sure.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, time's up. Back to me.
All right.
Thank you very much. Okay,
Thank you very much.
okay, so what you can see is I've started to establish my guideline with my clipper. So what I want to discuss with you is clipper lengths. And I think it's something that people get confused about when we're working with clipper guards and we're working with clippers in general. So first of all, I've worked with my closest clipper. So when I say closest clipper, what I mean is the shortest clipper that I own. So with that
And
in
what do
mind...
you mean by shortest clipper you own anyway? What is the shortest about it?
The shortest, when we say the shortest, it means the clipper that takes the hair off as close to the skin as possible. So we actually call this a 0-0. So I'm working with an Andes Supra, okay, which allows me to get the hair as close to the skin as possible. So what we have is a 0-0. Now what we've created is a curved guideline from the temple through to the mastoid process bone. And what we tend to do is we turn the gentleman into the mirror. So if you look into the mirror now, you can see exactly the same symmetrical guideline on the other side. So once we've created that using our environment, we then can come round and we can see effectively where our balance lies. So we can see now we've got this point and this point. So if I wanted to create more of a V shape in the back, then I can. If I wanted to create more of a round shape, then I can. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to work through this shape, and I'm going to complete our simple guideline. So, working from the left all the way through to the right, you can see how simple it is to get our guideline in, and then what we can do is just gut out the rest, okay, that of which we don't need.
How did you do that? How did you know how to take that across at that exact swipe?
Okay, so how I know how to work with that shape is simply by standing back, okay, standing back from the haircut. Watch me. That's it, from my side. So we can see that we've created this beautiful shape, okay? Rather, what we could end up doing is going too high. If we end up going too high, then we're going to start to follow the head shape. And we're just going to continue from what the previous haircut has done. So, now what we're working with is this clipper here. We tend to work with the length called a 0-0. So it doesn't matter if you have a wool detailer, a trimmer, okay, whatever tool you have which is your shortest length is on your 0-0.
Josh, I got a question for you.
Please,
so
ask
when
me
you, you know, when you took that, by having it low right here, what you said it gives you more room to blend?
Exactly.
By leaving yourself
That's
a little
right.
bit more scalability.
So
yeah?
if we again look at the profile view, so if you come over my shoulder, Kelly, so from the profile view, what we can see is we go just below the occipital bone. Now we're going to start to blend off the occipital bone, okay, and that's going to start to preserve the length around the crown.
Where you need to.
Being conscious of, again, of the crown is where we want to retain the length, because previously it was taken too short. So what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be working with a number 2 length, okay, on my standard clipper. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 2 fingers above the guideline. Okay, so I'm working with my fingers and understanding the amount of length and height that I want to remove from this side now. So my number 2 guard is going to go straight over the guideline, and we're going to work simply just on one side first. And what that does is it allows me to focus solely on one side. So once we have one side completely blended, then we can work onto the other side. And the reason why we don't go all the way round, okay, is because we want to maintain our balance through the haircut. Because many a time, what people do is they take the 0-0 and they go round, they work all the way around the head, okay, and then they come and check their balance, and then they come round this side, and they end up spending about 10 minutes just on the guideline. And again, we know that it's only going to blend out anyway, so we really try to work with efficiency in the salon, especially given the fact that we work with 30-minute appointments. And not only that, I don't think gentlemen
Maximizing
nowadays...
your day, huh?
That's it, and I think nowadays gentlemen don't want to be in the salon for 45 minutes to an hour, you know, especially when they're getting a haircut that they most likely do every 2 weeks. Okay.
Is that like when you're doing that, are you still moving away from the head, or are you more tuning into the head?
So I'm working completely off the curvature of the head. Right. Okay, if I follow the curvature, I'm going to end up going too round. Okay, rather if I go off the head, okay, I'm completely working square from his frontal view. So what we have here again is a nice clean base and a square silhouette. So just stay with me for a second. I'm now going to work on my outline, which is around the perimeter of the head. So this exterior shape here, I'm going to work with a mini clipper if you like, okay, and I'm simply going to work with a round shape, just creating that definition right at the temple.
Is there a reason that you use the corners of the blade first?
So with the corners of the blade, it allows me to create this roundness, okay, and that's what we want. We really want to try to establish a nice curve on the outline. So again, working at the temple, and what we're looking for here is a nice square shape, or a right angle if you like.
Is there any like suggestions or tips you would say for anyone that's working with the hairline around the face area with trimmers versus using trimmers versus razoring, straight razor rather?
Okay, so if there's a lot of excess length, as we just witnessed, okay, it's ideal to work with the clipper just to get your shape. Once you've got your shape, okay, then you can work with your blade and really start to refine the shape. Okay, so let me talk to you about the foil shaver. Now this foil shaver is something that takes it right down to the skin. And what we tend to do as barbers as well is we tend to work up and down with the blade being horizontal. Okay, so we tend to work like this all the time. Now with this particular clipper, it is really, really close. I'm talking it is like the skin on the back of your arm, okay? So what tends to happen is if we work horizontally with our clipper, okay, we tend to end up making lines. So what I'm going to show you is a way how to combat that. So merely what we're going to be doing is turning the clipper slightly diagonal and working in a rotary motion. Therefore, if we work just below the guideline as well, it actually allows us a couple of millimeters of follicle just before the skin line. So as you can see, I'm working into the back of the neck, okay, I've already done the very front, and you can see really closely that we have complete skin here, a few millimeters of follicle before our initial guideline. But stay with me, because we're going to blend this out real quick. So we have here our 0-0 length, okay? So what I'm going to do is work with a technique at Men's Spa Academy which we call guard skipping. So if we have a 0-0, then on the clipper we have a basic 0. If we pop the lever back, we have a 0.5. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to miss the 0, okay? Hence the term skipping. We're going to miss the 0, we're going to go straight to the 0.5. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take about a 1 finger's width, okay, so it should be about our middle finger, okay, and if we place it above the guideline, our 0.5 should just meet just above that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to visually leave you guys the line there, okay, so you understand the amount of space that we need to leave before the previous guideline. So this length right here, again, is our 0.5.
And there's a really key area right here that you're showing everyone. And you're kind of showing just that amount of space in between, that negative space that you need.
Right. So if you can see, okay, if I place my middle finger, yeah, that's right. I'm gonna place it just above the guideline, and you'll notice that it fits that particular distance. Okay, so that distance from the actual skin line into the new line. Okay, so we've got 2 lines now. Okay, is 1 finger's depth. So what we're going to do is we're going to miss out the 1, which comes after the 0.5. We're going to place the 1 guard on, we're going to pull the lever back, and that gives us 1.5, okay? And this is the terminology that we like to work with, and it suits our educational system. So we're going to go again, 1 finger's depth above. Now, if you can remember, we've already put a length number 2 onto the side of this gentleman's head. So now what you can see is we've left 2 complete full lines just for your visualization. So on the other side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through it straight away without leaving the lines, just so you can see a salon kind of speed that we work with. So as you can see, we have 1 faint line and 1 stronger line. And the reason for that is because it establishes exactly what lengths that we need to work with. So let me run through it with you one more time. So we have our 0, 0 line, we have our 0.5 line, and we have our 1.5. So what we've missed out on is our number 1 and our 0. So merely what I'm going to be working on is what we call our primary line and then our secondary line. So the line that we missed out first is the number 1. So you can see how quickly that line fades out. And that's just merely working our 0.5 into our 1.5. So there we have absolute space now just to work with our 0 line. So this right here is our 0 line, okay, because we have our 0, 0 and our 0.5. So merely I'm working and just tapping away at that 0, 0 line, and we're merely just fading that out, okay, just to give us a nice complete blend over this haircut on the right hand side.
Well said, Josh. Nice.
So that's it broken down into its simple form, okay, so let me check that out.
That
on
was
the camera.
awesome.
Let me have a look. There we go.
So good.
Yeah, so that's it blended in. So when we come to the contour, all we want to do is just merely scissor over comb, and then we'll get to that at the end. All right, Ollie, take it back from me, please.
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
I'm still here. I'm still here.
We still love
here,
you.
man.
We're here now.
Good. I was getting
All
sad.
right, welcome back.
Okay, so all I've been doing since Josh has been talking is I went for some lunch. No, I'm joking. What I'm just doing is I'm just starting to check how this real shape.
Champion.
That's right. He's horrendous, isn't he? Give me my minutes, Josh. Okay, so what I'm starting to do is I'm really starting to look at this shape in which I've created on the internal areas of the haircut. Now, what I could be doing right about now is I could be really starting to bone these sides really, really short.
Right.
But what I'm actually looking to do is keep this as soft as possible. Like I said, I want it to be really wearable. I want it to be something that's really salon friendly, and something as well that this guy here is going to take away with him and he's going to really enjoy. So I've put my outline shape in. I haven't gone too mad. I haven't done anything too kind of extreme. I've left a small amount of softness through there. Now I'm working out what I do need to take away. Now, for me, something that's going to complement this haircut really, really thoroughly is just by removing some of this area here to continue building up that crown area. Now you can see, I can see it on the camera there, this hair is all really, really flowing back now. The top and this area looks great, but this underneath kind of looks a little unkept. So I'm going to work to taper this out, not massively, but I'm going to remove it away with my clippers, and there's some scissors.
What will you start with
Let's
first
see it.
when you're
Okay.
with your clippers? What will you start with?
Okay, I'm actually going to start with a grade 2. Now the reason I've chosen to start with a grade 2 is quite simple. It's one of my longest lengths that I would use with the clippers, and what I want to start doing is building up that weight and removing this underneath bulk. So I'm just pushing into that previously cut hair, and what I'm always bearing in mind is that when I need to, that I've got my scissors and I've got my comb to do the real hard work.
But you say that you scissor over comb a lot after using clipper work, so it just depends.
Yeah, I think, you know, we really don't want to become too reliant. We hear it all the time. We don't want to become too reliant with our clippers. You know, if we can do the same job with our scissors, then we're going to be a lot stronger in our technique. So there's my first line in. I've gone in with a grade 2. Okay. I'm now quite simply going to work with a grade 3. Now I'm just going to push this out a little bit more because, as you can see, this area, his occipital bone sits quite low, and I really want to be blending into that point. So if I was to leave it here, it would probably look great, but it wouldn't be as wow and as exciting as perhaps it could be with
So
that.
you can actually make it a focal point.
Sure. I
Changing
want this taper to be really, really great. I want it to look really suit him, and I want him to really enjoy it as well.
And is there any particular head shape position that you would say that matters?
I like to. I mean, everyone's different. I think this is something that is really personal. I like to keep my client's head in a position that isn't too far down and isn't too far up. You know, as hairdressers, we spend a lot of time cutting hair with the client's head right down like this. And the hair looks great, and then they lift the head up, and you're like, oh, I need to go back through that now. So what I like to do again is work with a position that they're comfortable in, and also a comfortable that's, you know, realistic to life, you know.
And I notice you kind of, when you get to the round of the head, are you shifting your blades to use more of the corner?
Yeah, literally. I'm just working to flick this line out, and yeah, as I come towards the sides, I'm using the side of the clipper, just so that we're getting right in there. You can see his hair grows a little bit more difficult through this area, so I'm just angling my clipper into that hair.
Nice. I like that. Now, one thing, like when you're moving up and you're doing your blending, what would you say you would actually stop at? Would it be, is it a particular thing you're looking at?
Yeah, sure. So I'm working towards my occipital bone. I don't really want that coming any higher than that point.
Got you.
So what I'm bearing in mind is where the blend is, where the hair flows into that point, and also where I'm going to be able to use my scissors to just get that real,
because the scissors will add to more of what you're doing.
Exactly. They will give that softness. I want, you know, all of our appointments at Men's Spa are tailored and bespoke to the client that's in the chair. Now, if I was to give this guy like a really tight, almost like a skin blowout, it's not going to work for him. I want to give him something that's suitable, that's fashionable, and something that's well executed.
So if this client was to come back in, or to actually like, when should I come back?
Yeah.
What would be the time frame?
I would like to think, you know, it's going to give him enough time. Maybe 3 to 4 weeks, probably I would recommend with this type of client. Anything shorter than this would go lower, but obviously with this kind of length, it gives him, you know, this taper in itself is going to enhance the longevity of the haircut.
You know what I love? I love this area, how you, that bone that's there, how you
Sure.
just have that in mind.
I'm just keeping a little bit more darkness through here.
That's nice.
Now, that really complements the head shape, and also it allows us to keep that strong exterior line through that area.
I like that.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Well, I hope so.
Yeah, you hope so, right?
I love it. All right,
Hey,
great.
Lupe.
So we're moving on. As Oliver continues that, once he moves into his scissors, then we're going to go and see what's happening on the other side with Josh. Whenever you're ready, Kelly.
Let's roll.
Okay guys, once again, I just wanted to preserve this side just so you can see it in its real form without me explaining it too quickly. So what we have again is our 0, 0 line. I've worked my number 2 up to the contour. Okay, so from the profile view we can see we're starting to build a rounder shape. Okay, and from our frontal view we're starting to see much more of a squarer silhouette. So I've marked him out and I've taken him down with the foils. So we're working with this space here. So I'm going to work through with my 0.5. Remembering the technique, we're working with guard skipping, okay, and we're working with 1 finger's depth above the guideline. So there we are, without using the lines, okay, we can see that we've got a faint line here now. I'm then going to miss out the number 1. I'm going to go straight to the 1.5, okay, and I'm going to meet just below the number 2.
Josh, is there any time where you would not blend so much of it out, or it just depends on personal?
It depends on the hairstyle. Depends on the hairstyle. What we're going to do now is work with the number 1, okay, and it's going to come straight in the 0.5 and the 1.5, okay, and all we have to do now is work on our 0 line just to flick that out.
So Lupe is asking if that's flat to the head or angled.
So this right here is slightly angled. So if we look from behind, if you can come from behind, Kelly, you'll notice that we have the blade, okay, slightly works off the head shape, okay. Rather, if we're going flat, then we're just going to simply create lines. So as I work off the head shape, okay, I'm merely just graduating the hair naturally, okay. So we're just building off the head shape. All right.
Now you saved the occipital area for last. Is there a reason for that, Josh, when you're working it? Just For balance purposes. Huh?
So I'm working at the very back of the head, okay, just for our balance.
Okay.
And the reason for that is because, first of all, we want to work with symmetry. So we're working on one side and then the other, and then we work straight through the back. Again, I can work creatively if I wanted to through the back, if I wanted to create any form of graphic shape, or we could simply work straight and blend it right out. But my main objective now is, from our profile view, I want to start to create this triangular shape, okay?
Gotcha.
So, follow me. So here we work with our number 2 once again, and I'm going to follow that shape from the mastoid process bone just above. So I'm going to follow that through with my number 2, and I'm going to merely meet that round through to the other side. So again, similar to what we've done with our 0, 0 guideline. And again, from our profile view, okay, we just want to be working off the head shape. So we're actually starting to really create a much more stronger dimension with our head shape. Starting to bring his crown back to life and making it look a little bit more nicer aesthetically. Okay, so I'm going to take you through now a different type of fading technique. So what we saw earlier on both sides was guard skipping. So now when we work through the back, I'm going to be taking you through a technique called descending graduation. So merely we're working with lengths that come down in guards, okay? So the reason why we're changing the technique is because descending graduation allows us more control. So I'm going to be working first of all with the number 2, as we've just seen, and we've taken that just around the crown, okay, just trying to keep as much of that length as possible. And again, we're about just over 2 fingers depth above from the guideline. So I'm just going to work on 2 panels. I'm going to break it in half, this side and then that side. And now what we're going to be working with is our 1.5. So we're merely going to be working from 1.5, 1, 0.5 and 0. And what's going to happen is, if you watch closely, you're going to see this line fade out really, really quickly. Okay? So 1.5, and that's going to come straight up to the number 2, and it's just going to meet and blend right beneath it. And then I'm going to work with our number 1, and that's going to come just beneath that 1.5. Then I'm going to work with our 0.5, and that's going to come just beneath the number 1. And what you can see is that line starting to evaporate or vanish.
Now, that's the reason why you use that brush versus a comb? Or is it?
Good question, yeah. So this brush here, okay, just allows me to move all of the excess hairs away from the scalp. So with that in mind, it allows me to have a clear vision of where exactly my lines are. So what we can see is we have our final line, okay, it's going to work off straight from our 0, okay, and you're going to see it just blend all the way in now. Okay, cool. So my favourite clippers to use, no doubt, are my tool collection that sits right beside me. We have the Supra, we have the Magic Clipper, and we have the Andis Slimline Pro. These tools all have a specific purpose, and the reason for the Supra is because it takes off the majority of bulk straight away, and that's like my power tool, my guideline tool. We have the Magic Clipper, which is basically for my fade work, okay, and then we have the Slimline Pro, which is no doubt for all of my exterior outlining shape.
Nice, nice. It's looking really good, Josh. We're going to move over to Oliver as he's moving into this blending part with his scissors. All right. Yeah, we want to catch us up, Oliver.
What's that, bro?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, so I'm just working with the scissor over comb. What I'm doing is I'm not looking to create, any kind of removal of length at this point. What I'm really trying to do is just work with these darker edges, and I'm just really trying to create that soft, like that really beautiful taper. And through the exterior area, I'm trying not to work with the clippers at all, really. I'm almost working down using my scissor over comb, using the different lengths that I've got on my combs. And as I come towards the bottom, I'm really trying to get this out as soft as possible, almost with as little length there as possible, just by using scissors. Now, the reason I've chosen to use scissors is purely just to give that really kind of hairdressered, soft, all that kind
You know,
of
it's
feel
great
to
you
it.
said, because a lot of times you do get some guys that kind of love that natural feeling.
Sure.
A bit. So does this really help create that?
Yeah, definitely. And do you know what? I don't object to using scissors. I don't to clippers. I don't object to using thinning scissors.
Right.
I like to use the tool that I
Yeah,
find
it's like,
is
which
going to
one
get
is
this
necessary?
technique in perfect. You know. So I'm working still with my 5.5-inch scissor. I'm working now with the finer end of my comb, and then even after this, I'll probably start working down with my thinning scissors, just around this external point, just to really kind of blow out that edge.
So it's like refining to the max.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely, it's fluent, it's consistent,
Yeah.
and it's going to create a real beautiful silhouette.
Very nice. Now, with this part of it, right, would you say that the comb, when you're putting, how much pressure are you actually putting on the
So
skin?
at first, I'm trying to keep it as even and as natural as possible. You know,
Okay.
I'm working up the head in a consistent, fluent way. However, when I do get to this lower area, I will be applying a little bit more
Okay.
pressure. But yeah, through these areas that I'm working on now, I'm working with almost like an even pressure. There's not, you know, there's no real strength coming from my hand.
So it's like grazing, just
Sure.
grazing that has soft.
Sure, it's almost like the best word almost to use would be like it's a really elegant motion, you know.
There we go.
There's nothing aggressive about it. There's
Yeah.
nothing, you know. There's no part of me that's trying to create a real short, sharp look. I'm trying to create softness. Now, for me, the way you create softness is to use soft techniques.
Ah, I like that. Elegant. I'll charge them extra just for that word.
Ha ha ha.
All right, we're gonna go on over here to Josh now. He's really getting that design in the occipital. Tell me whenever you're ready. What size tooth is that on the thinning shears, actually? What is that?
Do you know what? In detail, I don't have an answer for you. But
Yeah.
they're,
Gerard is here, he'd be able to
yeah,
tell us.
sure. I think
But it
they're
looks like about a 32 maybe?
Yeah,
or
it
is
looks
a
like a
42?
32. 32. It's
Let's
the,
see a quick guess
it's
on
nice, but
it.
it's soft. though.
sort of really soft.
Yeah.
Really soft.
Okay, so I've just worked with a nice graphic shape through the very back. Again, just being playful. You know, it's something that sometimes we struggle with creating something new, but at Men's by Salon we've just been working with a lot of graphic shapes recently, and it's just something different. You know, if it doesn't work, then we can just generally fade it out. So it has no real depth of what we do, okay? We can just sort of play around with it.
When putting in a graphic shape, how do you know where to place it? What are you looking for? Is it in a
You know what,
specific spot?
It depends. It's really something that I feel is quite spiritual. I don't find that, you know, there is a particular place to put it in. It's more
Right.
so, you know, when you feel like it's best. Again, it's just something spiritual. It's something that is almost unexplainable. But again, with geometry and graphic shapes, how much of it comes down to experience?
So it's almost just like your expression.
I think so, yeah. I think it's just sort of the ability to be creative is somewhat your own vision, you know.
So would you say at Menspire, you know, it's like technical hairdressing, but still done fun?
That's right, yeah. So you've got to have your technical shape built in, and then you've got to have, you know, a visual shape, you know, with your imagination, no doubt. So we've got a really set and structured technical shape on the very top, and again for our outlines and, you know, maybe even our texture as well could be classed as visual.
Now, will you go back in with your scissors or thinning shears? What would be your next step after?
So my next move right now is to simply work with some scissor over comb, just to really refine the contours of the head.
So Josh, Vishal had a question about what you feel like the difference is between the magic wall and the Andis.
Okay. So, as I previously mentioned, hello Vishal, by the way, fantastic haircutter. So, as I mentioned with the Andis Supra, I actually only use those for removing bulk and pretty much placing in my guideline. The magic clipper I tend to use for most of the fading, and that's it really.
And then there was one other quick question about guards. Like, do you use the standard guards, or do you recommend purchasing other ones that are on the market?
So my preference is to work with the metal back guards. So here we go. This is one of the wall guards. It has a metal back. I find that the teeth are slightly finer, and they just shift through the hair a little easier. So they're the guards that I would recommend personally.
Nice. Like I noticed with the guards that people don't really look at that part of it, with the back of it and like how they move. But that's a really key thing, right? In barbering for you, right? Like just how flexible and how fine the actual teeth are in the guards.
Yeah. So if, for example, if you see a standard #1 guard, okay, the teeth are a lot thicker, which means it actually makes it tougher for it to transfer through the hair. So rather with this this particular guard right here, you can see that it just shifts through the hair really easily. Okay, so if you're working on your fade, okay, and because if the let's say the teeth are fuller, okay, it then pushes the hair away from you. But we actually want to transfer into the hair, so if the teeth are finer, okay, you get that a lot more individual hair shafts being taken off through the clipper.
Nice. All right, thanks so much, Josh. We're going. What do we have here? Oh, yes.
Okay, we're starting to come together now. I've still been working. I've got my clippers in my hand, so I can't say I've been working with my scissors. But I've just removed this bulk area here with my scissor over comb. As you can see, it's given that tapered effect.
Nice.
But because my client's got facial hair, like a lot of guys at the moment, I don't want to be taking this away too much. You know, I could maybe look to go in a bit shorter and work with like a beard fade. But I think, again, suitability is so important. So all I've done with the beard, he's very fortunate. He's got a really nice natural beard shape, okay? But the only thing that
Your mama did you well?
Yeah, she did him good, right? All I'm doing is I've just removed this small area through this back area. What this does is it just opens up. It matches that shape that I've put in through the back area behind the ear, but also it just kind of opens his jaw up just that little bit more.
Can you kind of show me that your scissor over comb approach that you did?
Yeah, definitely. So how I work with my scissor over comb is I work literally straight the same way that I did through the back area. So I actually started in the beard area.
Okay.
I worked my way right through. I kept my blade very static, and as I came up towards the front, I was just looking to flick my comb out. So I'm still not removing masses of length, masses of weight, but I'm keeping it, short enough that it can either just sit on the ear or just kind of flow backwards with the rest of the hair.
Just recapping back when you talked about the top of the ear, it's almost like you still have that in your mind as you're going.
Still got it in the top of my mind. I've worked so hard to build up weight through this contour area. I don't want to just take it off.
No way.
We do it a lot, but I'm being conscious. Just almost working with the points of my scissors through this area, just so I don't create any darker, kind of more liney areas. I spoke about this free-flowing hair enough already, but that's what I want it to create. I will be going just after the points. If they don't do the job, then I'll work a little bit more with the thinning shears, just through this area, just to get that real soft blend.
Okay, any finishing? Are you about finished here, or?
We're getting there. I think got to do the same. Got to do the same on the opposite side.
Let's see it.
And tidy this beard area up.
Let's
do it. Let's do it. Okay.
Let me just get a better spot here.
See, this shape's really coming together through there. So all I'm doing is I'm making, again, sure that my client's head position is correct. I'm going to naturally shape behind the back of the beard. And then you can see this area through here, and I'm sure everyone that's watching would agree, the minute we just take that away, okay, not masses of the hair, but just take that little point off that's around the back area. It just opens him up and makes him look, beards are good, but they need to be kept. They need to be looking smart. He's a professional guy, works in an office. We need to keep him looking smart. Okay. Now my exterior shape is in. I'm going to just go back in, scissor over comb. I'm going to start on the beard area.
All right.
Wide teeth of the comb. Static blade, and I'm just going to erase the hair that I want to erase slowly.
And you know what? I noticed that shift. Are you like pivoting off the skin? You would say
Literally,
right
I'm using the front of the ear as my guide,
right,
and I'm just going through the hair, and I just want to remove everything that I think is going to annoy him. As a guy, I know the areas, and with my experience, I know that these areas and these areas are the areas that probably grow out the quickest. So that's the area that I'm looking to take the shortest. I'm always checking it as well, the way in which that I want the hair to sit. you know, it's all very well cutting it, but I need to check that when he does his hair himself and when I style this shortly, that it's going to look correct.
So with this particular shape, he would have like tons of options on like how to
Sure,
move it around.
that's it. I mean, versatility for guys for me is the most important part.
Right.
You know, guys don't like to spend loads and loads of time on their hair, and they also, you know, they don't. I don't think really want to look as kept as what we've been making them look recently.
Yeah,
with all these hard parts, it's just too much, man. You know, everyone says it themselves. Like boys don't want to look like they've been to the salon. You know,
Right.
so we're trying really hard to work with some of these softer shapes, especially through the top and now as well through the sides a little bit, just to create that more manly kind of feel, you know.
So from this, are we going to just go in with some finishing, or are you going to refine a little bit more?
All I'm going to do, I've got a few areas that I want to work on. I'm just going to work on this very front area where I've maintained all that weight through this front corner.
Okay.
I'm just going to soften that out a little with the points of my scissors, and then I'm more or less going to be done.
All right, great. Thank you so much. Let's get on over there.
Okay, so I'm pretty much done here, guys. I've worked with the blade, okay, just outlining the very perimeter. Okay, as we mentioned before, we worked with the clipper to refine the shape, okay, and then we just worked with the blade just to really execute the finish. So I'm going to place some product in his hair, okay, just to get some lift, and I think you'll agree, starting to take shape.
I think you have it. It's in there.
We have a couple questions come in for you, Josh, from Johnny and someone earlier about what's next for Menspire and what your dream is for the team and for what you guys want to do.
Fantastic question. So for us, at the moment, we've just been traveling the States last month and of course this week. So I think our goal and our overall objective is to spread our message, spread our brand, and no doubt help improve the quality of barbering or the transfer of barbering into hairdressing, which is men's hairdressing. So I think for us and most of our team, I think we all have the same vision, and I think that's what brings us together as a team, to just really try to encourage the industry, the men's industry, to grow. Because I think over the past 5 years or so, male grooming has been on the rise, and again, there's been a lot of quality lost over the years. And we're just trying to really bring that back through much more of a technical approach in men's hair. So I think that for us is our goal.
Josh, can you give us like a quick recap of just everything?
I will do, yeah. I just want to get that dust from Ollie.
Oh, okay.
Let's sprinkle that on.
I'm sorry, Josh. 2 seconds. I'm sorry, man.
All right.
Okay, so
Let's go ahead and recap.
yeah, I've just removed a small amount of this weight since I last was chatting, just through this front corner. What that's allowed the hair to do, you can see it's just giving it loads of volume and it's sitting great. I'm really happy with the kind of the desired finish and what I've kind of come towards. The only thing I am checking is this area that we just spoke about, just behind the ear. I've looked to keep as much darkness there as possible. So when he does his hair himself, it looks kept. He's got that nice strong kind of hairline area. But also, I want to show that contrast between that beautiful soft taper into this free-flowing soft hair.
Right,
but I think we'll all agree, the kind of silhouette of this shape has done exactly what I looked out to achieve.
Right.
I've made
brilliant.
the silhouette's beautiful.
Yeah.
We've got this weight through the crown that really, enhances that area of his hair and his head shape. But also we've got this beautiful length through here that, whether he wants to wear it up or maybe just a little bit looser, it's going to work. So overall, I'm pretty set.
All right, thanks so much, Albert. Appreciate it. All right.
Okay, so I'm just going to wrap this up for you guys. I've just placed a little bit of dust in the hair, okay, and I've now got my hair free in. So I'm just going to recap on what we've done from start to finish.
All right.
So we started off with disconnection through the very frontal lobe. We curved the shape, and then we started working in our internal shape with diagonal sections and a square cutting line. We then worked from the very temple, created a section and brought everything down and worked with our cross graduation with diagonal sections, and then we worked through the very disconnection, just squaring it off because previously it was slightly triangular, okay, and we just want to create this bit more of a squarer shape. So from the very front we wanted a square silhouette, okay, and from our profile view we wanted a bit more of a triangular shape. Now the reasons that we had to factor in from the beginning was that this area here was really, really short. And through the crown also was really, really short, and it still is. So what we had to do was really start to try to build up a shape through the sides so that it would look really square from the front on. So with that in mind, we worked straight up, or we worked first of all with our 0, 0 onto our guideline, and then we worked 2 fingers above with our grade number 2, and then we worked with a technique called guard skipping, in which we worked with a 0.5, a 1.5, and then we had these 2 visual lines, and then we worked back in with our primary line and our secondary line with our 1 and our 0, and that allowed us to get this gradual fade, okay, with our strong perimeter that then went into our graduation and then transferred into our layering. Okay.
All right, guys. So we just would say this complete. Our hat right. Any last quotes? Anything you want to say?
I'm all done. I'm just admiring.
Yeah.
All right, awesome.
Yeah, perfect.
All right, thanks,
All right,
Josh.
guys,
We'll see you at IBS
Thank
weekend
you
at
so
the
much.
teach-in.
Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you guys.
Josh, Oliver, nice one. Minspire. Thanks.